Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the Tour de France 2024 men's route reaction. We'll have the women's route reaction. We're recording that straight afterwards, and that will drop in a couple of days after this podcast. Unveiled today in Paris in front of, loads of people as usual. A longer ceremony than normal as well. A.S.O revealed both races at the same time, the men and the women's races. But the men's race starts early. 29th of June to the 21st of July. The Giro's also, that then means there's less time between the Giro and the Tour, which is already a difficult double to combine. That's because of the Olympics, which splits the two races. The women's is actually after the Olympics, but that means the men's is earlier, starting in Italy, in Florence, and then crossing over the Alps after some punchy stages. The first three there. Got a first mountain stage on stage 4, heads north. We've got a gravel stage on the end of week 1 after some sprint stages, and then descends back a little through the center of France in the Massif Central. There's one big Massif Central stage in stage 11 before heading, traversing the Pyrenees, starting from Pau with a couple of difficult stages before back to the French side of the Alps with some really difficult stages and a finish in Nice for the first time since like the 60s. I think it doesn't start in, or finish on the Champs-Elysees. So what's Brittany done, Benji? Brittany and the north of France, it doesn't get a look in at all.
I think they're just not very tempting to go to because the mountains are always on the other side, and people are always saying you gotta limit the transfers between stages and so forth, but it also limits the possibilities of traveling to the entire other side of France to do a certain part of France like Brittany or northern France. And next to that, I'd also argue that in Brittany you probably don't have like the mythical parts. You've got Muur de Bretagne, for example, which comes back every time they go there, but you don't go there just for Muur de Bretagne either. And in northern France, that's usually where they go when they need the cobbles, right? When they either go into Belgium or they need the cobbles for this Tour de France. But with the gravel, they won't be needing the cobbles this time around. And like when it comes to a first look at the map itself, like I kind of dig it. It's not the most ordinary Tour de France in terms of parkour. Once again, we've got a pretty spicy start. We'll go into it in a second. Like the Firenze start, it's not flat. You don't have a Denmark start with 3 flat sprint stages or a time trial in there. It's pretty tempting for the punchy riders, for the climbers even, to already try something. And that continues onwards because we have a proper mountain stage in week 1, which is always fun. But week 2, for example, you mentioned Massif Central. You know which one is back? Puy-Marie. 2020 Puy-Marie, Pogacar versus Roglic. I reckon that was like 8.4%, 8.5% or something for that climb. It was pretty damn steep. And that's a big memory from that Tour de France as well, next to the epic stuff that happened next to that in that 2020 Tour de France. But the last week is just, we'll go through every single stage of them, but 3 of those stages are deadly.
Yeah, really hard. And sort of starting from stages 14 and 15 as well, they're incredibly difficult too, which was the case actually in this year's edition of the Tour de France. We don't have all the profiles, the exact ones, so we're working off 11, I think, confirmed profiles, 9 or 10. It's very irritating, happens every year, but yeah, the profiles are released for half the stages, the most important mountain stages, fortunately, but then some of the sprint stages or puncher stages, we have the graphic of where it travels, but just no profile is produced. Or the first time trial, they know where it is, but there's no exact profile for it. So, because it's very different if they finish on a 3K 4% climb versus a 2K 7% climb, at least in my opinion. So we're working off that, although for the most part, we know what the most important stages look like in this in next year's edition of the Tour de France. I think, it is not traditional in terms of we don't have Planche de Belfi, thank God. The Alsace region seems to get skipped for the first time. No Le Markstein stage like last year. But I do see a lot of parallels here to stages that I think have been successful in the past. I think we have a Grenelle stage. The Isola stage, I think, is the Grenelle stage. I think we're basically replicating the Basque Grand Départ last year. It's the same Grand Départ. Okay, it's not identical, but the themes are the same, very punchy in the first 2 stages. And then hard TTs. And also the Cuyol stage is like the harder version of the Lamarckstein stage. They've even ramped it up more for the stage 20 around Nice. So I think a very difficult parkour. The numbers, Benji, seem to bear that out, right? It's not the hardest tour ever in terms of elevation, but it's in terms of all Grand Tours pretty climbing heavy.
Exactly. So for context, the 2022 was really a hard one. So that was like 56,000 meters of altitude. And that's about, I think, 3,483 when it comes to distance. But just in general, I think there's a rule in the UCI roadbook that a Grand Tour needs to be under 3,500 kilometers long. And like, let's say that 25% of the Grand Tours have gone over that. But just for context, that was 56 in 2020. 2023 was 55.4 thousand, and then we have 2024, which is 53,230. But does that really say something, the actual number? Because I always feel like I don't know the exact kilometer distance of this Tour de France 2024. So it's all about, for me, the elevation density, because you can have 2,500 altitude meters in a stage that looks relatively okay for a versatile sprinter, but it's taxing over time instead of like the proper climbs you have in it. Do you value the actual total number of elevation?
Not really, because as you said, like, what if that elevation gain is accumulated by a hillier sprint stages which go to a breakaway or don't really affect GC? I really care about how hard are the hard GC stages, because yeah, you can accumulate a lot of climbing in, for example, stage 1 has, I think, 3,600 meters elevation gain. And are we expecting a minute gap there? No, we're not, most likely. So it can be indicative, as you said, Benji. I can tell you how long this Tour de France is, 3,492 Ks.
Yeah.
Exactly, according to the sheet, which is, yeah, not the same elevation density as others, but I think some of these stages have even, these mountain stages are really, really intense, even though they're not that long. They're actually under 150 kilometers, a lot of them, except the Plateau de Bay stage is very, very long. But yeah, I think a difficult route. I think there is no quote unquote easy Unipuerto like a Grand Colombier, and also there's no Mont Puy-Marie finish. Puy-Marie is in the route, but it's not the finish. So we're missing a wall finish like Mont, or even a pure punches finish, apart from maybe Deverlouis later. But who's going to this tour? Vingegaard's going. He's going to go. Who else is going to go after seeing this of the second tier guys? If you were advising them, Benji, to go or not?
Well, we can first talk about during the look at the parcours before we dive into the actual profiles who has stated that they would be going to the Tour de France, which Remco has stated multiple times that he's very interesting to go to the Tour de France. Pogacar has not said anything specifically. So that's one where I'm curious if he'll go Giro, whether he'll do Tour de France, whether he'll combine both. From UAE standpoint, I think they would like to have Pogacar at the start of the Tour de France. I think that's a pretty obvious standpoint from the team of UAE. Whether that will eventually happen, that's a big question. But Roglic will go. We know that he wants to go there. He's going especially to Bora to have a full team to support himself in this race. And now I swear that Lefebvre, at the actual presentation of the Tour de France parcours today, has stated that Remco was also looking at potentially doing the Giro or maybe a Giro Tour double. So now I'm also starting to doubt whether he will do the Tour de France. But Roglic and Vingegaard will 100% do the Tour de France based on what I would see right now. The other two are question marks. Other GC riders that might potentially do the Tour de France. What do you reckon when it comes to EF? Because from their standpoint, like a Carapaz and so forth, they got him to potentially podium at Tour de France. That's why they hired him, but I don't see that possible.
Yeah.
Although Carapaz on gravel, he was pretty good on the cobble stage.
And the high altitude, we've got some really high altitude in this Tour de France, so maybe on Bonnet, he thinks he can do well. It's not like there's no time trialing in this Tour de France. Like, there's still a decent amount of time trialing. And so if you think, okay, well, if you're a Carapaz, Enric Mas, and you're thinking start list strength, maybe you go to the Giro and just eat that time trialing knowing that a podium is still more realistic because you're going to lose in the time trial against Poggi and Vingegaard and maybe Remco in the Tour next year anyway, with 55, 60 Ks of TT we have on this course. So, yeah, individual time trials make it more complicated. I still think Thomas, Giro, and Rodriguez Pidcock Tour makes the most sense to me again. I think that's what will happen at Ineos.
Rodriguez Pirelli was good.
I think it's pretty good parkour for Rodriguez.
Yep, I think so as well. But we've now mentioned a few riders that could go to the race, but I also feel like during the actual in-depth profile reviews that will actually go to a rider and say, oh, this rider could actually go well here. So I reckon we'll probably add more to that list once we go into the profiles, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless there's anything else that jumped out at you that was like super surprising or funny today, I would say a bit of behind the curtain action.
Yeah.
I spoke to Jens Haugland and Eka Wiesbeek there, and I was thinking, for them, they're thinking which stage can be a breakaway stage.
Yep.
Those sort of the managers of Uno X and Intermarché, they're looking at where's a nailed on breakaway stage, and that's the one for me that I'm looking at. It's not as clear to me, maybe because the profiles don't exist yet, but there's not as many I could put my finger on, like stage 10 and 12 this year. I was like, break. Stage 19 this year, 18, break. This one, not so much so far. And the second thing was Mark Cavendish got the biggest cheer, Benji, of anybody when they did the rider procession.
Oh, that's pretty great. Well, he has a history with the race, which is understandable. Who else was there? Let's classify that for the people that didn't watch it.
I would say it was a weak French. It was a weak French. There's no Gaudu, no Pinot, no Laporte.
Benoit.
So.
Benoit. He was there, right?
Benoit was there, but he was there, but he didn't have a good year, I don't think. And Poggi wasn't there either, so maybe he would have got a big cheer. Lebu and Cordon Rigaud got big cheers. That's my behind the curtain. Who got the biggest cheers? Cavendish seemed to get the most. Maybe because people are happy he's back. I don't know if it's yeah, I think so. Is
he happy?
Winning at the Tour for over a decade.
We can talk about after this Grand Tour whether he's happy about the amount of sprint stage and opportunities in that regard. Because Champs-Élysées ain't happening.
I think it's
so that's one minus.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one. Because I think you got to be a fit sprinter to get around this.
Or you DNF at stage
should we kick off the route?
15 or something. But yeah, let's kick off the route.
Yeah, let's kick off the route. I'll do odds. Benji will do evens. Like always, the opening stage from Florence, going from the middle of the country in Tuscany to the east coast to Rimini, 3,600 meters of elevation gain across 206 kilometers on day one. Really, really difficult medium mountain stage. Although, and there, let me count, 7 categorized climbs. None of them are rampas. They're all sort of 6%, 7%. The final climb, 7Ks, 5%, which, as I said, the Hyiscabel was 7 kilometers, 5%, with the last bit being steeper, about 20Ks from the finish to the crest. This is the same. It's the same stage. Well, it's more difficult than the Hyiscabel stage, but that final is very similar to the Hyiscabel. Yeah. And I can't remember the Getxo climb, but yeah.
Vivero. Alto de Vivero?
It was but the one after Vivero, the steep Côte Piquet.
Yes.
Piquet, yeah. Who goes for this, Benji? It's UAE again with Poggi.
My thing with this parkour is indeed who will control the stage, because you said it. Ooh, the one stage there, with the San Sebastian climb that I just completely forgot about. Hyiscabel, yes. Now with the Hyiscabel climb, the control phase wasn't that hard. You didn't have 5 medium mountains, basically, or 5 proper, well, it's medium mountains, I would say, before the actual final climb hits. So you got to control a lot in this parkour, and the first climb being 11.2 kilometers at 5.7%, the Colli Trefaggi, I'm thinking if the break waits until that point to start, there might already be quite a few people on this stage to try and go in the breakaway to make it hard for a team to control. So yeah, maybe this will be the stage where you see UAE Team Emirates desperately try to control a breakaway with Nils Pollitt, who has just joined the team, against a lot of breakaway attempt riders. And KOM is available, a lot of KOM points already on stage 1. So that's interesting. You might be able to keep it for quite a few days in week
Yeah,
1.
true. They'll be
And
cat freeze with 2 points.
I do agree that I like the parkour for something, but it's also so early in the Grand Tour that I'm not sure who is willing to bet on stage 1 already.
I know, but it's the yellow jersey.
Yep.
Like, could you imagine a world where the Tour de France peloton lets a breakaway win with the yellow jersey up for grabs? Like, someone will pace. UAE with Sivakov in, you know, you've seen their Italian Classics team. Surely they'd want to go for the stage win. If they also have Adam Yates, who won stage 1 with the sort of counter-attack in the valley where Vingegaard was isolated. So do I think there could be huge gaps on this stage? No, despite the impressive numbers of how much elevation gain there is, because a lot of the climbing's shallow.
Mm-hmm.
It's far from the finish, the final climb, and the final climb's not that hard. For GC guys, it's not hard. So it's long, but if you're getting dropped here, you're not in the correct shape to contend at the Tour de France anyway. So it could be Yoni Zagira who won like the Rosier stage. This is very similar to actually, which maybe Benji is just chaos all day and people just start attacking on the what's it called, Barboto climb, which is the hardest climb. I don't know, but I think it's interesting. I think it's too hard for Pedersen, right? Or Wout van Aert, like no chance.
I would take a look at, let's say, the second half of this race. With 129 kilometers into this race, you're right. There the Barboto climb starts, 6.1 kilometers at 7.4%. I would see that if you want to do something as the climb where you attrition someone and don't attack it, because there's a plateau on top, and I don't like that for the attack. I'd much rather be interested in making it hard on that one, pushing the descent that comes afterwards after the plateau section, and then going on the next one, which is the Côte de Saint-Léo. I love how they like Frenchify every single bloody Italian climb here.
Yeah.
5K at 7.4%, same steepness. I haven't looked at the in-depth gradients to see if there's like a kilometer at 10% in there versus a kilometer at 3%, but there has to be some terrain on that climb to make a move if you want to do that. And then the last two can be the terrain where you kind of try benefiting from the easier gradients once you've got the gap. So this could be a raid stage, but the fact that it's on stage 1 makes my head not believe that.
That's tough to imagine. I mean, UAE would, because like realistically, like is Jonas Vingegaard going to be like, yeah, stage 1, that's going to be where I try to win the Tour de France? No, not really.
And like,
I mean, we've got also, God, I got to mentally adjust to Roglic, Benji, as well.
Yeah, but
like, how will Bora approach this with Roglic?
The thing is, Bora loves these kind of stages, but Roglic, we've seen in the Tirreno Muri stage, for example, in the last stage of Paris-Nice.
He's super conservative.
I'd not bet 100% on a stage like that from stage 1 to make it a raid stage for Roglic, because we've seen it backfire in his past at Jumbo-Visma, you know?
Yeah, if it finished on the Bologna wall, go for gold. You know, he's shown that in Emilia, he kills it. But the flat finish, I'm not sure his flat sprint just on the flat, because it's not after a climb on the flat, it's just flat finish. I'm not sure he's clearly better. I'm going to go for Remco to win this. Remco wins this stage, takes his first ever yellow jersey in a flat sprint from a group of 12 guys. I think that's and Poggy, it's him or Poggy, and maybe Lefay wakes up. I don't know. Maybe Benoit Cosnefroy goes through as well. But stage
plans are too long, remember?
Nah. Stage 2, Benji, hard as well.
Yes, stage 2 is hard as well, and it also takes something from a different race. We saw last year in Basque Country in the start of the Tour de France, in the Basque Country stages, the Vivero from the Getxo race, also Côte de Piquet, but also next to that, Gijsgebel from San Sebastian. And here we see the San Luca climb, Côte de San Luca. I can't. I really literally can't. It's a stage from Cesenatico to Bologna, 200 kilometers again. And it's got basically twice the San Luca climb in the last 30 kilometers. But there's about, I'd say, 10 kilometers of flat in between those climbs. And once you top the San Luca climb, it's not like it goes descending immediately. There's like a little bit of a bump on the road on top of the San Luca climb before the descent. So that's also intriguing. And there's about, I'd say, if I had to guess, 7 kilometers after the descent to the finish line, 6-7 kilometers to the finish line from the bottom of the descent of San Luca. So it doesn't stop at the top. I I love this stage because it allows an opportunity for the punchers again. The problem in 2024 is that the punchers are also the best GC riders.
I mean, there was Lafay on Côte de Piquet, like he was
Fact.
the exception for 1 or 2 stages this year. This is the Côte de Piquet stage. If stage 1 was stage 2 of this year,
Yeah.
the Hayescabel stage, this is the Côte de Piquet stage with a steeper, shorter climb and closer to the finish.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, should be more selective, I think. 2K's 10%, and we've seen how there can be gaps on that climb. You know, it's very hard to stay together on that climb. Cesenatico is where Pantani is from, I think, where it starts. Roglic, I think if Broe were looking at it, they'd probably like this stage more than the first one. But then it's the flat finish, uphill. I'm going to go Adam Yates flyer. Adam Yates on a flyer takes it again, is what I'm seeing here.
It's very possible. I've been trying for the last 2 stages to imagine a scenario where Corbin Strong wins, but I feel like the climbs might be just too hard for a scenario like that. So on this one, I'm also not able to see that. I'd like the Adam Yates card. The question is it going to be on Tour de France? We're just guessing that, for example, he might be next to Pogacar here. And this is where indeed a dual leader strategy could work. If, for example, the group is thinned out on that San Luca climb, then you can have your second leader attack and then see what happens. Exactly like you say, exactly like how Adam Yates was able to benefit from that situation.
Well, Simon went too.
I'm going to say Pogacar for this one from the group.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, he won the group sprint behind on the Côte de Piquet stage as well. Would it be better for him if this stage finished on the Bologna climb? I think for him and Roglic, it would be better.
Yeah.
Then they can really punch away from Vingegaard, take 4 or 5 seconds on the road, and then also take the bonies as well. I think Roglic they will circle this stage. I know it doesn't finish on the climb, but it's still somewhere he's won before multiple times, that region. Stage 3 from Piacenza to Torino.
Wait. 2022 Wout van Aert could compete on this parkour, right?
I don't know about that. They do,
really?
If it was 1 rep, they do multiple reps. And if UAE ascending that Bologna steep climb with... No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because in 2022, in Imola, he got punched away from by the best punchers, like Alaphilippe. So I don't think so. Stage 3 from Piacenza to Torino. The first sprint stage, again, this is the mirror of the Basque Country Grand Départ, where they finished in Bayonne on stage 3. This is flat. So not flat. There are 3 actually categorized climbs. But I don't think KOM should change hands on this stage after the climbs of the previous 2 days. And from my eagle eye, 230 Ks long with those climbs, with a little, what I think is a little uphill drag in Turin. This screams to me Mads Pedersen. Philipsen will probably win, but this screams to me a Mads Pedersen type stage. Attritional, long, previous 2 days have been super hard, but it's a nice sprint stage, Benji.
I'll go Philipsen because I feel like in Limoges 2023, the stage that Pedersen won, my head says that's harder. And Philipsen was relatively close.
Probably.
And on this one, I'm going to go Philipsen. He's also able to do the distance, 30 kilometers. This could also be the scenario that, because it's such a long stage, that sprinter teams, I don't know, like, you have the incentive to have a breakaway of like 6 riders trying to go in the breakaway. The KOM jersey is kind of already...
Benji, don't do this. Don't do this.
That's not what I meant. I mean,
we say
no
this every year.
For the breakaway.
Oh, okay. I thought you were about to say that many teams will realize that beating Gaston Philipsen and Pedersen is probably not going to happen and go in the breakaway.
First sprint stage?
Absolutely, that fucking 20 teams, dude, on the front. Sandy Dujardin. Sandy Dujardin solo break for Total. Bet all.
Very possible.
And like Paulus or someone who's in KOM doesn't need to go on the break because he's got enough of a lead already. So it's like, this could be a brutal stage.
That's true.
Yeah. But what's this weird stage 4 to bring us back into France?
Pretty rough stage, huh? For a 4th stage of a Grand Tour. We had a rough start in this Tour de France as well, in 2023 one with the Tourmalet stage and so forth. But here we've got Pinerolo to Valois. We've got 138 kilometers, a really short stage actually, of which the first 50 kilometers are already uphill. But the official climb starts, well, to be fair, it literally says 39 kilometers at 3.7% the first climb, which I think Sestriere, the last 6 kilometers of Sestriere are the steepest, 6 to 7%. Am I drunk?
I know. I think the actual climbing on Sestriere is obviously much steeper than 3.7%.
Yeah.
There's just literally flat sections in there. But you're right. Like the last climb is actually a decent enough climb, up to over 2,000 meters.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a solid climb. And then the next portion is a climb in the middle, which follows basically in the descent the Col de Montgenèvre, 8.3 kilometers, 5.9%. But the actual meal in this stage is the Col du Galibier. We've seen this climb loads of time before. Souvenir Henri de Grage. We've got 2,642 meters high, so high altitude. And, well, it is a descent finish. So the last 20 kilometers are downhill towards the line after the Col de Galibier. And I feel like this is the Granon stage without Granon.
I feel like this is nothing.
Yeah, but if
I
you
think
cut
this
away
is them
Granon,
trying to get back into France as how can we get back? Yeah, I mean, what was before Granon? Lacet de Montvernier, and
Telegraph.
and then the Telegraph. It was the harder side of Galibier, right?
Yes.
I think this is much softer. Is Valois where Izagirre won last year?
Yes.
Maybe, doesn't matter. I think this is strange.
Now, I don't even know anymore.
Yeah, it's Issoire. I've conflated the two. These look like fake news climbs. All three of these are fake news climbs. I'm saying that right now. The official profile for the Col de Montgenèvre, Benji, says 8.3k, 6%. The drawing here, unless someone's hand has gone askew, a part of it seems to be vertical. Yes. And then there's a descent in and so, is there a rampas in Humanas as they cross over the border into France?
And the profile has a vertical descent in the Galibier. People are going to fall down.
Yeah, and then exactly this. And then in the Galibier, there's like some steep sections. So they're very irregular climbs, particularly the last two, which is this actually more like... I think this is like the Col Terret stage, but without Col Terret, where it's very short.
The hardest climb is now the last one.
Who goes for this?
I don't know. It's very short, so people might still control it. If you're Pogacar, UAE Emirates, you might consider this.
Oh, but then they're long climbs, like they're long climbs, but then they're not that steep. They're kind of irregular, like Col Terret, where Poggy was really good last year. But then do you want to play with Jonas on hour-long climbs at altitude? Like, is that where you want? But then it's a descent finish where you're right. I think 2 leaders here is very effective. I think you want to have 2 leaders for this stage, especially with a descent finish where it's not all descending. Like the last 5Ks, is pedaling as well, or 8Ks. I think, though, this could be a Leonard Kamna breakaway style win, because maybe neither Jumbo nor UAE have the appetite for it. Maybe Bora go for it with Roglic, maybe Remco goes for it, but I think the break has a decent chance, and someone like Kamna can really win this and take yellow for a few days after this.
It's a curious stage, that's for sure. I generally can't put my finger on it and say this is a scenario that will happen, and that's kind of where the profiles for week 1 end. That's where we have to scour into the in-depth, the in-depth book we have here, the road book, and stage 5 is basically a stage from Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne to Saint-Vulbas, Plein de Lin, which is 177 kilometers. That stage, and that is an opportunity for the sprinters, is how it is described. And how do we look at these kind of stages when we don't have the profile? Do we just invent the storyline, or
no, we just take Christian Prudhomme's word for it. If they're not relevant enough for a profile, then I'm assuming they're just a sprint stage, which is true. Like he says, this is a sprint stage. He says there's a 2K, 6%, 5% kicker with 35Ks to go. It's a sprint. Philipsen wins it. We all go on to the next. That's how I see it. Pretty much.
Okay.
Stage 6 is the same from Macon to Dijon. It's another sprint stage, apparently, with an 800-meter straight in the last portion of it. Pancake flat. Don't even know if there's wind in this region. I don't think so. Medieval architecture, though, but this is another sprint, which is fine. So Cav's getting some opportunities.
Yep.
But yeah, that's stage 6. It's not even long, 163 Ks.
Stage 7, we've got Nuit Saint-Georges to Gervais-Chambertin, 25 kilometers time trial, individual time trial. And taking a look at Christian Prudhomme's commentary, great wines for great riders. That's the first sentence. So anyway, there's a climb of the Côte de Courtil-Vergy. What?
Well, you have to have a minimum blood alcohol content to start the TT.
Facts. There's a climb of 1.6 kilometers at 6.1%, which comes in the final section. Will test their tolerance to pain. Okay, there's a climb of 1.6 kilometers at 6% in the final of this time trial. So the rest time...
What's his last sentence? On the face of it, there shouldn't be big gaps. Did he watch the Convlo TT last year?
I don't know.
A Healy TT of 25Ks.
We don't know if it's fully heli. We know that there's one climb of 1.6 kilometers in there, but the rest I'm guessing is relatively flat based on this explanation, which I don't think it's going to be a 2-minute gap like, for example, on that Combloux TT.
No. No, I don't think so. I think it starts with a descent. I think it actually starts with a downhill. They roll around some forest, go back up that kicker. I think it's definitely one that Van Aert could win. It's a borderline, like the specialists can do it because it's not so hilly. Yeah. But it's also great for Pogacar, and it's great, great for those sort of guys as well. It reminds me almost of the Mikel Bjerg Dauphiné TT, I think, the parabola style profile. So UAE are quite good at these, but I think you got to have an engine. Don't know what Ganna's plan is, but yeah, I'm going to go with Stefan Kung wins this one.
There's no way. He always has to come second. You're breaking the rule. It's not okay. But,
sure, that is the rules. Okay, are you so?
Okay, I'll let you go to stage 8 then, which is another sprint stage?
I believe so. Another sprint from Simmer on Auchois to Colombais, les deux églises. Wow, that's tricky for your boy. No altitude records will be broken, but there's 5 categorized climbs. Apparently, this is like a versatile sprinter stage with the last third is flat. There's hills, 5 categorized climbs beforehand. The break will form. It could be a really strong breakaway. Like this could be very similar, I think, to stage 10 of this year, which was won by Pello Bilbao in a sort of small group sprint ahead of Zimmerman. And I think that could be the case too, where especially if Philipsen's won a few stages and people are reluctant to help Alpecin, is a sort of stage where maybe not now he's on Jumbo, but the Jorgensens, the Izaguirres, the Bilbaos get in a breakaway and make life. And Israel as well. Chris Naylands, never forget, on stage 10 this year was solo. So this could go either way. I think could be a pretty exciting stage before one of the most controversial stages of the parcours, Benji, the Troyes to Troyes stage 9.
Controversial is what you can call. We had cobble stage in the past. We also had in the Tour de France Femme in 2022 the actual gravel stage. We had 4 segments, I think, in there when it comes to gravel segments. And we know that A.S.O, the organizers of the Tour de France, tend to test things out either in the Dauphiné or the Tour de France Femme. And now we see that the Tour de France Femme project was successful because they have made a full-on gravel stage, which is not 199 kilometers of gravel, so don't worry. It's 199 kilometers of a combination of both asphalt and gravel with 14 gravel sections. And I'd say there's 2 phases in there. I'd say we've got sector 14 until sector 7 is quite hilly, while the last 6 sectors are basically flat sectors. And there's about 2 of these sectors that are from that Tour de France fun stage, but in general, how hard it is, I think this is easier than a Montalcino stage, for example, at the Giro, but...
You think?
I think so.
Yeah, it's not as hilly. It's not as hilly.
But it's still going to be rough. Like, if you see this in your Pogacar, for example, do you see an opportunity here?
I think they would have preferred the hills to be near the final, as you mentioned, and that was the key with Montalcino. The hills are near the final, and, you know, Pogacar's a fantastic rider, brilliant, but the reality is the flat end of the cobble stage where he was solo, him and Sturven were losing a shitload of time to the domestiques chasing behind. Like, he was losing time, and that's because the physical reality of he is still a 66 kilo rider against maybe 273, 75 kilo rouleurs chopping off. So I think they, as you said, would have preferred a Montalcino style finish. Vingegaard said after the release of the route that, you know, bad luck can play a part and you can lose 5 minutes here. 5 minutes. Come on. How are you losing 5 minutes? He lost 13 seconds on the cobble stage after the musical chairs.
If he has that mechanical in the last 10 kilometers, has another mechanical and a crash in that last 10 kilometers, then you can lose 5 minutes. 2 mechanicals and a crash. But I would say 32 kilometers of gravel in total. That's a lot of kilometers on gravel. This is for me the stage where I don't see this as an opportunity for someone to win this race. But as always, the bloody cliche is that you can lose this stage by crashing, and not just on the gravel, eh? We're talking about this stressful, frightful positioning. And then I hate to say it, but I'm looking at Roglic and I'm fearful because Polit has left that team. They still have Dens. They still have Marco Haller for positioning. But I am still a slight bit worried about his safety in the run-in towards these gravel segments.
Yeah, especially if the hills beforehand thin out his domestique core. And so those guys need to get over those hills to support him because, as you said, he crashed into the gravel, not on the gravel. He crashed into the gravel when Colbrelli's shoulder charged him in 2021 in the Britannia run-in. He crashed in between the cobble sectors with the hay bale behind Stefan Kung in 2022. So, yeah, this is... I'm not sure it's that good for Poggi either, unless he can somehow collaborate with Mads Pedersen, with Arnaud Delis or something in a move where they get the stage win.
It's not bad for Pogacar, but he might not be able to gain as much as the first impressions might allude you to. Because the first time I saw this, I was like, oh, they've got a cobble-like gravel stage in here with major difference potentially. But I'm not sure the major difference will actually happen.
And the last 50Ks is flat. Like, what is he going to do? On the earlier hills, go with 60Ks to go on the gravel and keep the gap.
Like, have your team pace if Tim Mullins is there, but maybe he's allergic to the sun still.
True, yeah. True, this is in summer.
Polit?
Yeah.
Who else
who do you think wins?
Degenkolb won that cobble stage back in the day. Who will win this stage?
I can't go past.
Philipsen?
Philipsen. Yeah. Philipsen.
Because maybe imagine if he did Paris Tour this year. Possibly.
Will he do the tour with the Olympics afterwards? I don't really know I don't know what the optimal scheduling is.
I don't know either. And there is the opportunity. I also don't see major opportunities for Van der Poel in this tour so far. As in, yes, he might compete, but in most stages I've said Philipsen can win them. So Van der Poel as lead out in preparation for Olympics, that is possible.
Yeah, possibly. Okay, that's week one. I would say there's a lot of exciting stages. There's some different stuff. I think it's nice. Like this year, there is one mountain stage, but it's a strange mountain stage crossing over the Italian Alps back into France. But to be honest, apart from unless there's a TT, there's a lot of different things going on in week one. There's almost something for everybody. But hopefully there's still close gaps going into the first rest day, which is in Orléans, and then stage 10 from Orléans, which I think is as close as it gets to Paris.
I think so.
Wrong. To Saint-Amand-Montrond, which is a flat stage, but they, according to Christian Prudhomme, they changed direction in the last 30 kilometers 3 times, and there's been crosswinds before. Cavendish, I think, won here before when there was echelon action. So this is echelon territory. This is where Paris-Nice often goes through on the way down to the sun in Nice in the opening stages from Paris. And so, yeah, it's a crosswind potential stage. Might be worrying. Might be a cracker. Who knows?
Yes, stage 11 then. We've got Evaux-les-Bains to Le Lioran, and that's an interesting one. 211 kilometers in there. And this is what I spoke about in my dialogue at the start. Puy-Marie is back. And Puy-Marie is going to be used differently because if you remember, we had the fight between Martinez at EF back in the day, and was it Hirschi?
Yeah, and Kemna.
Kemna,
No,
sorry.
Kemna. Schachman worked over Martinez. I had a big bet on Kemna actually that stage.
Okay.
Yeah, spewing.
In this one, Puy-Marie, 31 kilometers from the finish line is when it tops, which I kind of love that because I feel like it forces action to happen there, and we will see the attacks on Puy-Marie. Because Puy-Marie, let's not forget, 5.4 kilometers, 8.1%. But somehow when I looked at that stage, it looked steeper to me. And
nah, there's ramps in there. No.
Yeah.
It's steep. That's a fake news climb.
Yeah, I thought so as well. And then it goes down, and it's got the Col de Pertu, sorry, 4.4 kilometers, 7.9%. Also pretty steep one, to be fair. And then just before the finish line, we've got the Col de Fonte-Serre, which is 3.3 kilometers, 5.8%. But I see attacks on Puy-Marie happen, maybe, hopefully.
I think so. If you're Poggy, right, isn't this the stage where you try and go for it?
Yeah.
Because
this is the
you can go
UAE.
on Puy-Marie.
Yeah?
Yeah, the team's good for it. That being, I mean, we say that, but this is in the Massif Central. This has, by the way, 4,300 meters elevation gain in this stage. These Massif Central stages are so deceiving in the profile. They are so difficult, especially the way modern racing is. 211 kilometers with 4,350 elevation gain. And you look at this profile, you're like, medium mountain. Look at Marie Blanc. Look at Monde. Look at those stages. They're very, very difficult. And I think there could... Yeah, Betex was brutal, albeit some longer climbs, but that was a brutal stage. So I do like that the 3 hardest climbs, because the Col de Neyron is 4Ks 9% before Puy-Marie. So the 3 hardest climbs are before the last climb, and probably the breakaway wins because there's 3 hours before that Neyron climb. But yeah, the satellite riders will be in play, of course. People want to get satellite riders up the road. But yeah, if you're Poggy, you probably back yourself on a finish like this. I think, though, the most likely outcome is actually no time gaps, and him and Vingegaard and Roglic rolling over the line together with the bonus seconds already gone from the breakaway.
Possibly, but I don't know. I feel like this is the kind of stage where UAE Team Emirates gives everything they got to try and control a breakaway that might be too large for them to control. And this is where we'll see if Polit will actually make the difference for their breakaway formation phase. And that will be, will Pogacar and whoever is in that group that attacks on Puy-Marie be able to catch the remaining breakaway riders or not? I don't know. But it should be a fun stage. That's certain. Like this is a mini raid final.
That one.
Yeah, exactly. Stage 12,
yeah,
Aurillac to
I really want to
Villeneuve
watch
sur
this
l'Eau.
one. I think it's going to be good.
You're not going to watch every single one, or just skip the sprint stages?
I mean, if there's no profiles for them, then it's difficult to watch them. Maybe the stages don't exist. But yeah, sorry, go on with stage 12.
Stage 12, Aurillac to Villeneuve-sur-Lot, 204 kilometers. And this is also one of those stages that does not have a profile. And there's something for the breakaway specialists to play for. The terrain here is all hills, with the climb to Rocamadour standing out. So Rocamadour, the 2022 time trial climb, which should be intriguing. Breakaway opportunities. With an exact profile, I'd be able to signal who I'm looking at, but I think this might be the kind of profile where Van Aert, Van der Poel, those kind of breakaway riders might be combining with a Mohoric, with an Izagirre maybe on a stay. If it feels like Parkour is still okay
Magnus
enough for
Court
him.
for UnoX.
Yep. So all that kind of stuff happening on stage 12, I think.
I reckon this is not a sprint. I reckon this is the breakaway. I think they're underplaying how hard the initial part of this stage is. Whereas stage 13 from Agen to Po gets the stage almost every year, is a pancake flat stage. So apparently there's a couple of climbs, some hills near the finish, but they shouldn't really worry sprinters. And so I think this is who do I like? I'm going to go with Christophe the Door. Christophe Laporte wins a random weird sprint because everyone's tired.
I feel like we've skipped Merlier a lot in this. And I feel like, I don't know, will he go to the Giro? Will he go to the Tour? I don't know. If Remco wants to do the Giro and the Tour, then Merlier can do the Giro and the Tour as well at this point. I don't care.
And Jakobsen's on DSM. Welsh is not going.
Yeah.
I like Pedersen for a lot of these. But yeah, anyway, stage 14, Benji, where this is, we've done the first 2/3 of the race. This is where the race really intensifies from here on out.
Yeah, for certain. Paul, once again, the starting city. And the finish is Saint-Lary-Soulon, but mainly the Plata des climb after 152 kilometers. But let's start at the middle of the stage. Col du Tourmalet, Souvenir Jacques Godet on top, 19 kilometers, 7.4%. I've actually completely forgotten what all these souvenirs mean, by the way. It's like prizes you get on certain climbs, but what they stand for outside of having the name of like an ex-cyclist or something, I do not remember.
Henry de Grange, the highest one.
Is it though? Because Thune de la Bonnette is at the end of the tour, which is 2,800 and not 2,600.
I don't know what Souvenir Jacques. It's just named in.
Yeah, de Grange is also not
specific to the Tourmalet.
Oh, well, okay, well.
So Souvenir Jacques Godet is specific to the Tourmalet. Yeah, apparently.
19 kilometers, 7.4%. That's the first climb, middle of the stage, basically. They descend that and do the Urquette dans 6 ans. We've seen that climb a few times before. Is it in my head or have we
Mythical
seen that
Mikkelberg. This is where Mikkelberg destroyed Androt Wout van Aert. This is that climb. Before Peyregoud.
8.2 kilometers, 5.1%. It sounds Mikkelberg if you think about it. And then they've got a 5 kilometer valley before we get to the Plata des climb. 10.6 kilometers, 7.9%. Tourmalet is really hard. Although, yeah, it is really hard. Like, I'm not going to paint a picture for it. 90 kilometers at 7.4% is pretty tough. But with that, Urquette dans 6 ans before the final climb, am I seeing some Pogacar opportunity with that final climb?
I think this is kind of in between. It's not quite as hard as the Alticamp stage, which was the day after the Peyregoud stage. Alticamp stage was more clearly like a 45-minute climb, a 30-minute climb, and a 35-minute steep mountaintop finish. Vingegaard. It's not as easy as the Peyregoud stage, which was more 15-minute climbs. Valerand-Azé was 20 minutes, Urquette was 20 minutes, and then Peyregoud was 20 minutes. It's a little bit harder than that, so I think it's finally balanced, and I don't know the answer, Benji. It depends on their form. I think it's possible Vingegaard can drop him on Plata des. It's not an easy climb. It's the first part is steeper, but I think it's also possible that Poggi in his Calteret shape can win this climb, win this stage too. So I think it's very intense once the climbing starts. I don't see a breakaway winning.
No.
Because I think it's going to be a shit fight for the break on the flat for a long time, and they won't get any leash.
Exactly. Also, that flat start is really what kicks the bucket when it comes to the breakaway for me. Now, I like the stage, but the next one is also a rough one, also a big one. Loudonville, always a name we see in all these mountain stages, a starting spot as well. Plateau de Bay as
that's where Poggi.
Yeah, after Peyresourde.
Is Loudonville where? Oh, I'm so good. I know everything about France geography now.
198 kilometers, Loudonville to Plateau de Bay. Plateau de Bay. I got to give a major speech to the epic Belgian that won there in 2011, Jelle van Endert. Absolute legend. I think he won ahead of Sami Sanchez back in the day when he rode for Euskaltel. Vaguely remember something like that. But and then Jelle van Endert kind of went into nothingness, unfortunately. But anyway, still epic. Plateau de
Didn't he
Bay.
come like third in Flesh randomly every year?
Yeah. He won on Plateau de Bay. He was our new GC talent after Jurgen van den Broek, my friend.
Dude. You guys are so lucky now, and yet Remco gets abused in the press.
Mate, we had years where we were highlighting Kevin De Weert's 13th spot in the Vuelta, man. So we've had dark days. We've been in the position that Australia's in right now.
We took yellow on stage 5 of the Tour this year. What are you talking about? Hindley would have won if he didn't crash. You guys are not even good at cycling.
Anyway, 198 kilometers. It is not a flat stage. Starts off with the Col de Peressourde immediately, but it's only really like the last 7 kilometers of the climb. 7.8% though, so it's a rough one. So breakaway formation climb, I would say. There's a bit of a valley in between the next 20 kilometers, but the climbs keep on coming. We've got 9.3 kilometers at 9.1%, 4.3 kilometers at 9.7%. Where do they get these gradients? And then we've got a valley.
I didn't think these gradients existed in France.
They apparently do. We're in the Vuelta at the moment. Like 50 kilometer valley, 60, 70 kilometer valley. Col Agnes, 10 kilometers at 8.2%, with a small bump on top with the Port de l'Air. And then we've got a 20 kilometer valley roughly before the Plateau de Bay, 15.8 kilometers at 8%. That is not an easy climb. And in my memory, only top riders have won there. Like Joaquin Rodriguez, like Jelle van Endert.
Fucking hell, man.
I'm sorry. I had to.
This is the closest stage to my house. I'll probably go do a recon of this next year. Plateau de Bay is near Tarascon-sur-Ariège, which is near Foix, like deep in the Pyrenees, Ariège Pyrenees, very slow roads. So like it's not often great tarmac. It's even maybe harder than it first appears. Can get some bad weather sometimes. And this is a brutal stage, Benji. Nearly 5,000 meters elevation gain. The opening salvo of 3 climbs, I would like to see 3 climbs of that difficulty in the start of the stage like that. I've not seen that in the Tour for probably any time we've been covering the podcast. And then that long valley, where the brake should probably get some leash. Pardon?
The Tour de France is just faking the epic start of the Stelvio stage in the Giro. That was an epic start to a stage. Too bad the rest of the stage sucks there. But
well, at least here this has a mountaintop finish, you know. It's the hardest climb of the day. Maybe, of course, it's not the high altitude, but I think this is one for Vingegaard, really. Like a lot of attrition, a lot of climbing. It's a brutal stage, and really, I think there can be very, very big gaps at the finish. I think the break still wins.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the break can still win because that valley's so long. But you got to be good. You got to be good to win it, like a Felix Gall. So I'm going to go with Felix Gall from the breakaway.
That is actually a pretty good call. I'm going to go for Vingegaard from the peloton. Only legends win on Plateau de Bay, just like Jelle van Endert.
I was going to pick Remco because you said only Belgian legends win, and I think this reminds me a lot of the stage he won on stage 14 in the Vuelta this year with Auxerre, very difficult at the start, and I think in the valleys he's a killer. So Remco's also from the break could be a great option, or not just from the break. Maybe he opens really early, but brutal end to these 2 stages, Benji, 14, 15. Are they harder than Juplin Le Betex? I think they're more mountainous, and I think on balance they are harder.
I think so as well. It's also, I reckon this one's longer. No, I don't remember Juplin to be the longest stage in cycling history.
Actually, yes. What am I talking about? Clear 200Ks like this with 5,000 meters. That's a super, super hard stage. But then there's the second rest day before stage 16 from Grussant to Nîmes. This is a transition stage for sprinters, but there can be crosswinds in this sort of area. But will the sprinters have made it through? Like, if you get dropped in break formation on the Peressourde on stage 15, you could be in trouble here on stage 15 with time cuts. So, sprinters for stage 16 and then 17, Benji, as the next semi-GC day.
Exactly. Saint-Paul-Trois-Châteaux to Super Dévoluy, 178 kilometers. And well, this parkour looks like what you'd expect a Unipuerto to be, but that's not true because it's a tri-puerto with 3 climbs at the end of like a build-up. So we've got 132 kilometers of false flat uphill.
It's Grand Colombier deconstructed into 3 separate climbs because the last climb's kind of shallow.
Yes, that's true. Now, the first of the 3 comes with about 33 kilometers to go. It's a Col Bayard, 6.8 kilometers, 7.3%. Already pretty rough, but it's too far to go, in my opinion. The second last climb is where the action will happen. Col du Noyer, 7.5 kilometers at 8.4%. As a launching pad before we descend towards the Côte de Super Devolui, which is 3.8 kilometers, 5.9%. Are there segments in Devolui that are steeper? I swear there have to be, because that name is always shouted about, but it's a bloody bump in the road on this profile.
Yeah, the first part is steeper, and then it levels off at the end. This is screaming Poggy small group sprint win to me. If UAE can control the breakaway, or Roglic, it has to be said. So I think this is a nice stage for Roglic too, but it's really about, can they control what will be a rampant attempt from probably 17 teams to get in the breakaway on the flat for 3 hours before they start the Col Bayard.
Get out of here. It's going to hurt so much.
You think...
I think it's possible.
You think break wins?
No, I think the fight will be interesting for the break. I just don't know where it will snap, because it's always like, you look at this profile and you're not seeing that ultimate climb where the break can form. It's like 130 kilometers drag until you see a split somewhere. So can't tell you where the break will form, hopefully with 130 kilometers into the stage. Because then it's going to be interesting. But anyway,
I don't expect big gaps on this stage.
Yeah, me neither. But the next stage, what do you think about that one? Stage 18.
Gap to Barcelonnette, still in France though. We don't have a profile for this, but apparently it's a transition-y sprint stage, but there's 2 climbs where a puncher can win on the Côte de Saint-Apollinaire and the Côte de Demoiselles Coiffées. I think this is that how you say it?
No, not at all, but it read like coffee the first time I read it.
Yeah, the caffeinated climb. I think this is sort of like the Asgren Morich O'Connor stage this year. I know I don't want to compare everything to the same stage, but really, I think it is to the most recent tour, but it looks like a transition stage, and it's really whether a sprinter team can control. I don't know. It really depends on the positioning of that final climb. But the last 3 stages, Benji, 19, 20, 21, we then start the last phase of the race where this stage 19 from Embrun to Isola 2000 is brutal.
Yeah, it's the Grand All stage is what you stamped it. We've got Embrun as a start with 20 kilometers of flat, maybe a bit of altitude, like 10 meters up, 10 meters down, but the real climbing starts after 25 to 21 kilometers into the stage, which is the Col de Var, which is 18.8 kilometers at 5.7%, but that's just a warm-up. 18.8 kilometers and just the warm-up, because then we've got a small descent of 20 kilometers before we start the big one. Chim de la Bonnette has been shouted about numerous times in the past. 22.9 kilometers at 6.9%. 2,802 altitude meters. Can you remember a climb of that altitude in your life? Because Stelvio's 2,700. I do not remember a climb of 2,800.
Iseran's close. Iseran's close, but not that high. This is the highest paved road in France, apparently. So... there is no higher.
Wait, no. The one that they made bigger.
Sierra
or something.
Nevada. They only went to Sierra Nevada. They only go to 2,500.
Oh, okay.
They can in training. They can go up to 3,000. So Sierra Nevada has a higher paved road, but they don't use it in the race because of the ecological impact. They wanted to go to 2,800 or 2,900 in the Vuelta, but they weren't allowed to in 2022. This is brutal. This is so hard, this climb, like 7% average for 23 kilometers to that altitude. You're basically, let me do some maths.
This is Stelvio.
You're doing like 9 kilometers of climbing at over 2,000 meters.
Yeah.
And there's also where it levels off. It looks like a little bit of false flat there, so I dare say there's some steeper sections, and it's preceded by a fair bit of climbing beforehand too. Like there is climbing beforehand, and then it descent 15k valley, just like with Grenol, and then Isola 2000, 16.1k, 7.1%, not as hard nor as high as Grenol, which finished at 2400 and was 11k's 9%, but it's longer and just a brutal stage. Like the intensity in this stage is unbelievable, and this is harder than the Telegraph Galibier, the Bonnet. Is it not, given how high it is?
I think yes, Col de Var plus Cim de la Bonnet, I would say so. For me, this is basically the Stelvio being followed by Isola 2000 is how I see it. That's how I look at this profile. And I was thinking about which climb I can compare to like Isola 2000, and I was thinking maybe an Otakam is closer related to it than Grano.
Yeah, but even that's only 13.5k, is a little bit steeper. It's a long climb to finish.
Yeah, and I like it. So let it come. This is one of the stages I'm most looking forward to. I think this fits Vingegaard more than a Pogacar. But then again, who knows? Maybe Pogacar makes that step forward, which I would hope so for the competition of the race. But this is a deadly stage. And the funniest part is it's only stage 19.
Yeah. We got 2 more GC stages after this. We got a TT as well. So yeah, I think this is where a huge difference can be made by the best climber, and I think we might even see action on the Bonnet, because I know there's a valley afterwards, but if you crack someone up at that altitude, you can take a lot of time that cannot be taken back in the valley.
Bring back Rohan Dennis.
Rohan Dennis. I thought you were about to say Lopez, who's suspended by the UCI.
Nah.
Yeah, maybe. Stage 20 from Nice to Col de la Couillole. This is like Paris-Nice stage 8 plus the Le Markstein stage. Even more intensity, 133 kilometers long. Just there is no flat in this stage. They do the Col de Braus, 10k, 7%, followed by Turini, where Roglic won in 2022 Paris-Nice in an uphill sprint. 20.7 kilometers at 5.7%, but I think the actual climbing is, in the last 2/3 of that climb, is steeper than that average descent. And then the Col de la Colmiane also is featured in Paris-Nice before, 7.5Ks at 7.1%, but I think the other side. And then a descent, and then the climb that Poggi won ahead of Gaudu and Vingegaard in this year's Paris-Nice, Col de la Couillole, 15.7Ks, 7.1%. This is all 4 of these climbs in 133 kilometers, a really, really difficult stage. I think the long climb finish suits Vingegaard, but it's all very regular, and it is still a short stage. So I don't see, like with Isola, he clearly has an advantage based on recent history. This is an amazing stage, Benji, where there could be a raid on the Turini almost.
I love the idea of that. I'm a bit salty when it comes to this stage. It's also l'étape du Tour, so it's kind of the touristy version that you can ride.
Okay.
I was thinking I kind of want to ride l'étape du Tour in 2024, but it happens on the same day as the Bloody Gravel stage, so that's not happening. But this stage is indeed quite one that could spark things up, and it's also, yes, there could be a raid on Turini, but it could also just be attrition until the last climb, which should still be solid action on the last climb then. So worst case scenario, we've got a proper battle on the final climb. But I'm guessing that the gap in GC should be huge by now, or should be notable. It can't be 10 seconds. It's going to be a minute, a minute 30, 5 minutes. Hopefully not.
Yeah, I think if you want to take back a 1 minute gap and you think you're banking on this stage, I don't think it's the stage for that. And I think, you're in trouble there.
If you do arrive here with that gap, you got to go earlier, like you said, and not on the final climb. So that's kind of my conclusion on this one. You might see opportunities for breakaway riders at the start, but I feel like this is going to be GC day regardless of that. And that's what we said. Like, how many times have we mentioned breakaway? 3 times, maybe?
Yeah, barely any, because normally a breakaway stage, you want to see right, quite long climbs and mountains in the first half of the stage, some more climbs, but nothing too severe in the finish. Like,
Yeah.
like what in this parkour? And so,
Or
if, for example, if the Firenze stage was stage 12, I would say that's a breakaway stage, but it's stage 1. And we don't have many of those other stages. And Dev Louis, that is one I can pinpoint, but this, it's hard for the break to win this.
I think so as well. And I feel like it might not be a discussion we can have in this podcast, but have the breakaway riders become the victim of the shortening of mountain stages and Grand Tours because there's not that middle valley where the gap can expand enough before the final climb?
Yeah, like a Plateau de Bay, you say, okay, normally GC go for it here, but there's such a big valley that the breakaway guys got a real shot. And that's the same thing, the valley before the Rosier collection of 3 climbs on stage 12 in this year's tour allowed the group of Izaguirre and Jorgensen to form so they could actually win that stage. So I'm not sure. If you go on Paris stage 8 or Le Markstein last year with Pinot and Pidcock, it was a good breakaway with Barguil too. I know that was an easier stage, but they got clawed in easily on the final climb. So whoever's behind, be it Poggi, be it Roglic, be it Vingegaard, they're going to send it on this stage for sure. Like they have to. Before the final TT in Nice, instead of the Champs-Élysées, we have a very challenging TT from starting in Monaco, where many of the riders live, 33 kilometers. They do La Terre-Bie, which goes up into the hills behind Monaco from Beausoleil, 8.1 Ks, 5.6%, but there's some 6% kilometers in there. Little plateau before the steep back end of Col d'Aise, which is 1.6 Ks, 8.1%, but there's a 10.5% kilometer there. Plateau of 2 kilometers before a stepped, shallowish descent in parts, and then the last 5 Ks of flat along the Promenade des Anglais in Nice. They go back and forth with a hot dog turnaround. So it's another hard TT, Benji, where it's going to be who has the best legs after the brutal previous days.
The best GC rider wins here, I'm saying. Like, this is a proper climb. Yeah. Based on the time trial in 2023, you have to shout Vingegaard for this profile, 100%. Especially with the downhill as well, because he took seconds in like every corner and every descent that he could. This is not a technical descent, if my memory serves me right, from the Pyrenees final stage, which is in this area, so I'm guessing it's the same road. But yeah, there's not much to say there outside of that. I don't see Van Aert doing well on this parkour or well enough to be able to compete for the victory. Remco could compete if he's still there. But Vingegaard is the name that shows to mind.
Yeah, if Roglic is still there, it's good for him, I think.
Yeah. Also the climbs at the start, which is mentally easier.
Yeah. Imagine all 4 of Remco, Pogacar, Vingegaard, Roglic within 30 seconds of each other going into the TT. It won't happen because something always happens to somebody, and but imagine that would be the dream for the organizers and the fans. I think it's a really good profile for Roglic, I must say, because he's a little bit heavier than Vingegaard.
Yeah.
And the Col d'Aise section is quite short. It's like the San Luca climb.
Yeah.
I think he's good in the skis. I think he'll be training hard for the Olympics TT too. So I think it's a really good TT for Roglic. Of course, it's an excellent TT for Remco. And La Terre-Bie is not as difficult. Do they bike change here? No.
Bike change at the top.
Do you start on the road bike?
Nah, I don't think they do
and change on the top of Col d'Aise? I don't think so either.
Would be really funny.
But yeah, maybe someone will do it. Maybe. Anyway, those are the 21 stages. I think there's enough sprint stages, but I wouldn't say it's as generous as the Giro to sprinters. So there's a fair few sprint stages, but really even some are quite hilly that I think, especially in the second week and third week, are 50-50. I think a Merlier, a Merlier or a pure sprinter should leave after stage 13 and go and then clean up in the Vuelta. I really think with no Champs-Élysées, we might see record sprinter abandonments, which I think makes a lot of sense.
if Philipsen abandons after stage 13, will he also get a call from Eddie Meggs?
No, because Philipsen is fit, and also he'll be fighting for the green jersey. He said he wants the green jersey.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking
okay.
Jakobsen, Merlier
Caleb
type
Ewan?
operators.
Because Caleb Ewan got a phone call, right? Or was that the
Well,
Giro?
I think Ewan will do the Giro, and Groenewegen will abandon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Interesting.
maybe won't, but I think that would be the prudent thing to do.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think a lot of riders like Merlier also shouldn't stay after stage 14 if he's here remotely.
Yeah.
Because like, if the whole Remco story of the Giro is doable, and if he actually thinks about Giro Tour double, which is going to be hard to combine with Olympics, that comes after the Tour de France, so that sounds very difficult to all combine. But if that is true, that storyline, that narrative actually is realistic, then I see him going for GC at the Giro, and a more realistic scenario is that he might not be fighting for GC at the Tour de France then.
Yeah, I mean, I think that doing the Giro first is not a bad idea because, yeah, if you forget what's happened in the past at the Giro, it's a great parcours there for him.
Yeah.
And then if you do the Giro, you kind of come into the Tour with less pressure because if you fail, you say, well, I did the Giro. It wasn't my best prep. So I think it's not a bad idea to do the double, especially if Poggi doesn't do the Giro, then I think Remco has to do it. If he's the only one of the big four or big five or whatever at the Giro, then I think he has to do it.
I think so too.
What do you think riders will do to prepare for this Tour de France, Benji? So we saw Vingegaard do Gran Camino to do the TT. Will we see riders doing Strada Bianca that wouldn't normally?
Maybe. That's not impossible. It's also because some teams try and use races that have similar characteristics, not just for the rider that is the leader, but also for the teammates. And what happens in case of like a puncture mid in the race? How do we respond to that? Can we learn from those situations in the race to do it better? And that's something realistic. Also equipment testing, but that can be done by any rider at Strade. That doesn't necessarily need to be done by the GC leader in question. I don't know. I think it's going to be a generic start in terms of like the preparation, in terms of Dauphiné and so forth. I expect to be one of the bigger races for preparation for the Tour de France, as always, for the likes of Vingegaard. Maybe Pogacar does Slovenia again, which wouldn't be shocking either. But in the early season,
Paris-Nice.
A 1 week race in February, a 1 week race like Paris-Nice or Tirreno, depending on the parcours, probably Paris-Nice at the start of...
Because then you can do the recons after.
Yeah. And then the question is, how many classics is Pogacar going to do? Will he do the Giro? Like, nobody knows. It's too early, man.
I think Paris-Nice might have a really stacked start list for that reason, that it's finishing in Nice and they want to, first of all, race on those roads initially and then also do a reconnaissance of the time trial course. I mean, Tirreno Adriatico is not exactly far you can get, but maybe after San Remo is also not a close drive, so maybe after San Remo, Remco will do a reconnaissance of the TT parcours.
If you're A.S.O, don't you just want to adapt the last stage of Paris-Nice a bit to make sure you've got Tourbillon and Col d'Aise in this shape to maybe get people to come?
Imagine the last stage of Paris-Nice was they literally just made it the stage 20 Col de la Couilleule stage. It's the exact same stage.
No, the second
and
last
the TT
stage.
is the yeah. Just like, well, listen, don't even need to do an extra recon. Just come to Paris-Nice. You do the Tour finish. Do you think... I think the gravel one is a little inducement to the Mads Pedersens of this world and maybe Van der Poel. Is that enough to sway Van der Poel? As you said, Benji, I don't see multiple stages with flashing lights for Van der Poel, like maybe the Brittany start. Which it doesn't have those stages where there's 4 1 to 2 minute climbs near the finish, at least from what we've seen. So who do you think is I think this is a nice parcours for Rodriguez based on how he performed on Juplin. I think this is a really good parcours for Carlos Rodriguez if he takes a step up. Or, I mean, Almeida or Ayuso, Almeida says he doesn't want to do the Giro, so Almeida's doing the Tour, right?
I think the key to this, well, I don't know if Almeida's actually going to do the Tour. I feel like
He said in the press he doesn't want to do
he
the Giro.
wants to do the Tour. Yeah, he doesn't want to do the Giro, but that might not lead to him doing the Tour de France necessarily. The team doesn't feel like he deserves that spot, because it's always going to be a battle between leadership in that team when it comes to the Tour de France, and other riders are currently one step above him. For example, Pogacar, Adam Yates is also a step above that, above Almeida. I'm looking at this race in the glasses of which GC riders are good at multi-puerto stages, mountain stage with multiple mountains, 3 mountains, for example, 4 mountains, whatever, or 2 harder mountains, one of them very hard, one of them hard at the end. And then I'm also thinking about Rodriguez, who was good at that, for example. But
yeah,
is there anyone else that really shines out like
Steven Kruiswijk?
Are you serious?
Low key's actually good on these climbs.
I'm not having this conversation.
I mean, he actually is good on these climbs. If you look at Olivier
right?
and the Grenache stage, yeah, of course. But he actually is on the long, steady climbs. And if you look at, like, what was it in the Dauphiné? Anyway, there could be some random riders that pop up who like, because I think this is the proliferation of over 30 minutes, 7% climbs in this tour there's a lot of those climbs in this Tour de France. How that plays out, I'm not sure exactly. But you have to say, I think Vingegaard starts the favourite. I don't think you, with the Isola stage and the hilly TTs, like,
heavy favourite.
Has to start the favourite. Yeah, I think so as well. Of course, we're 7 months, 8 months, 9 months away, but anything can happen. But I don't think it's a good parkour for Roglic, to be honest.
Agreed.
But then I think the TT is good for him. So
it's also all these stages are so heavy, and if a team paces it, that might drive up the kilojoules before the end of the stage so much that it might start hitting Roglic where that hurts. Well, Vingegaard, it's gonna be interesting. That's for sure. Yeah. Vingegaard is for me favorite as well. I think Pogacar has terrain he can work with, but I don't think the gravel stage is as much of an opportunity as people might pretend it to be for him. I think it's limited.
No, I think stage 1, stage 4, and stage 11 are sort of where UA might have an advantage. Where if they still got Yates in GC, I mean, Yates in Italy is unbelievable. We saw that in Lombardia. So he's I think Yates has to go. I think Yates and Sivakov have to go, and maybe then it's like, well, where does Almeida and Ayuso fit into that? Is really interesting. So, but yeah, I can't wait to watch. Who's going to win white? Because Poggy can't win it anymore, right?
What?
Poggy can't win the white jersey anymore.
You're right, but I don't know
who's
Carlos. Eligible then. Carlos versus Ayuso, depending on who goes. Remco still alive?
Remco or Johannesson. So I spoke to Haugland before. He said they're not going to really go for GC. Do you think that's the right thing?
Yes.
I think so too. I think
he's in the Ciccone space right now.
Backdoor a break or something.
Johannesson is Ciccone for me. Norwegian Ciccone.
I mean, that's a bit generous to him, but...
Nah. I think it's true. Coulthard, the way he rode there was fucking good.
Coulthard was very impressive. He probably could have won that maybe if Wout van Aert and Jumbo didn't send Tourmalet. He was very, very good on that finish. But also Ciccone on the Basilica in Grenoble in Dauphiné. It's a pretty good level. Anyway, that's our Tour de France men's route reaction. Before we sign off, ratings, Benji. We gave, what did I give the Giro? 7.5?
Yeah. Is it still a 7.5 looking at this?
Yes. Oh no. I think we were in a good mood. I think we were being too
so
nice.
Generous.
I think really that's a 5.5, 6, the Giro one.
I'm already at 4 out of 10 for the Giro at this point. It's because
I remember these tour stages. If someone said to me, "Oh, what stages are you looking forward to next year?" I'd be like, Isola, Plateau de Bay, the Nice time trial. I remember, Benji, I can't tell you any of the Giro stages.
I know there's a time trial in 2 time trials.
I can't tell you.
I don't remember that. And there's one with the Salvio at the start because I complained about it a lot. But for the rest, I actually don't remember the rest of the
very unhappy
Giros.
about that.
So I'd like to change my ranking of the Giro to a 4 out of 10. And I think this for me is a 9.5.
What? Really?
Yes. Yeah. I like it a lot.
No, I'm giving it an 8.
Okay. But to be fair,
I think
in 2 weeks you might drop that by a point and a half.
I think stage 4 is weird. I think there doesn't seem to be much for the punchers. With a puncher finish. I think the gravel is a bit of a gimmick. But the mountain stages are really, really good. And so it's an 8. And I like that there's now 2 time trials. I think 1 time trial of 28 kilometers last year is just not enough. So, yep.
Okay, 9.3.
8 out of 10.
I've changed.
Fair enough. All right, thanks for listening as always. And stay tuned in a couple of days for our Tour de France Femme avec Zwift route reaction then. Till then, ciao.